Howdy all you delicious people, I'm here today to view Batman Return of the Cape Crusaders. So, this is a, really fun, goofy, animated movie. We come to find out that this film is to reference quite a bit of Batman in general stuff, like Batman movie titles, or certain lines that at certain points that Batman were to state either in movies or comic books. But so we come to find that this episode feels like a lost episode of Batman 66. Like this wasn't something they could have pulled off in the show, so they tried it here. So I had gone on and at certain points watched Batman 66. I kind of caught these random episodes here and there off of reruns at certain points. There were certain characters that I wasn't exactly familiar with, like Aunt Harriet, or there would be certain villains that I was like, okay, those seem by the end of this movie, like, okay, these were kind of unusual characters that I don't remember all of. But other than that, this movie was just rather fun. I thought that this was a good animated film. So with that said, what is the story about this movie? Well, we come to find out that Batman in this film is going to be his own worst enemy. It comes to find out that Batman will be a villain in this story, where he seems to be duplicating himself multiple times and becoming certain head parts of Gotham's town. And so we end up having Robin, who is to team up with Catwoman of all people, to try and stop Batman. Even to the point of having both Robin and Catwoman needing to rely on certain villains. So that just kind of becomes the fun of the story. So, with that said, I think in this movie there were certain characters that I wasn't familiar with, like Aunt Harriet. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't really know who she is. Didn't really ever remember her being in the story, and I don't know why she was such a key thing here. There was also, I think, just a lot of running around going on in this film, where this movie is fun, but yeah, it's just a lot of going all over the place. Surprisingly enough, for how short of a runtime this movie is, it's a very long movie, and it feels like they go into a lot of directions where it would be surprising that they even have a sequel to this. But so, with that said, yeah, the animated. Does anybody remember the Batman 66 movie where the iconic scene is Batman has the bomb over his head and he's running around trying to figure out where to chuck the bomb, and by the end of the movie, they're in a submarine and Batman finds Catwoman and he kisses her by the end of it. Yeah. Just kind of remembering any bit of Batman 66 that I can, because I remember seeing the film maybe a couple times. I don't know. It's been a while. Anyways, so with that said, let's go on and double five this bad boy up. I think it's about that time yet again to, of course, go into spoiler time, and about that time I'm going to spoil this movie. Before we go, where can you go on and see this movie if it's not available on HBO Max or whatever place that you can probably easily get a subscription? There is an app called Zelifonic, Zelivonic, Zelifonic. Check it out. Without it out, you can watch this movie there for absolutely free. And so, with that said, movie's good. Thumbs up. Batman references. It's great. Let's get nuts. So, let's go into spoilers now. So, in the very beginning of this, we have Wayne Manor. And we, of course, have Bruce and Grayson that is practicing ballet. And so Grayson is trying to get certain positions because I guess he has a recital coming up or some a big thing coming up. And so Bruce is telling Grayson, it's like, well, yeah, like definitely go into ballet because it, of course, like is to really make you flexible and this and that. And we would, of course, realize that even certain pro athletes have gone on to done ballet at certain points. So after it seems that Grayson has worked up quite a bit of sweat doing his ballet, we then have Bruce is like, well, hey, how about we just kind of like sit back and just enjoy the television. And so we tune in to a show called Gotham Palace that the host, who I believe is Monroe, is to go on and talk about the band that is to perform here, which I believe is Hecker and the Ho Daddies, or the Ho Daddies. And so as this band is to start performing, we have certain people that are to realize, wait a minute, this isn't the Ho Daddies. And we come to find out that it's revealed that it's Joker, Penguin, Riddler, and Catwoman. And so all of a sudden, the Joker character is to go on and mention that the real Ho Daddies are actually in this closet somewhere, all being tied up. So they go on and all of a sudden have the audience who wants to, like, well, hey, we gotta stop these villains, like let's take it upon ourselves to try to take these characters out. So they try to bum rush the villains, and we all of a sudden have Joker with this guitar that shoots out this confetti that kind of ties up every bit of every audience member. So we all of a sudden have Bruce and Grayson being alerted by Alfred that the bat signal has popped up. So while Bruce and Grayson have gone on to try to make their way to the bat poles and the bat phone and whichever, we all of a sudden have them be stopped by Aunt Harriet, who is very suspicious about where they are both rushing off to. So we, of course, have Bruce and Grayson that, of course, make up a lie about them going on a fishing trip. Or we have, of course, Harriet's like, well, this seems like a very odd hour to go on a fishing trip. And they're like, well, yeah, like, we just really need to catch that fish. And so they end up just trying to get away from Aunt Harriet as like, as Harriet's not buying their story. So we have Bruce and Grayson that make their way to the Red Phone to then talk to Commissioner, who is to, of course, mention that the villains had taken over the Gotham Palace, which, of course, both Bruce and Grayson had been well aware of that because they had just seen the show. So we come to find that both Batman and Robin will make their way to the police station to try to figure out some riddles to know where, of course, the villains are heading next. So we have Bruce and Grayson making their way down their fire poles or their bat poles, and they, of course, turn into both Batman and Robin, making their way through town with the trusty Batmobile. So they make their way to Gotham Station as we, of course, have them with a riddle that they have to solve, which they realize that this riddle is to be nothing. But then they realize, like, well, what could be nothing? What could be, like, another term of nothing? And they realize that it could be a goose egg. And so we come to find out that a goose egg could be tied to when something could be delivered, as we come to find that I guess a goose egg would be delivered on a lunar eclipse. And so, like, okay, what was delivered on the very last lunar eclipse? And then they realized that at the Atomic Energy Laboratory with Dr. Nichols, there was a replica ray delivered there, and so that must be where they're going next, the villains. So we have Batman and Robin making their way to this laboratory with the Batmobile, and they realize they need to cross the street. But Batman and Robin are going to go and take the right way to cross the street, and they go and they rush off to the crosswalk, and so they all of a sudden just cross the street that way, and I thought that was kind of funny. So we go on to have the scientist Dr. Nichols, who's talking about the replica ray, and he is to showcase by uh, by having one cylinder and have it be replicated. So we all of a sudden have the villains come in. Joker is to go on and have his Joker gas, his laughing gas. So Batman and Robin, of course, make their way in here as we have Batman, who's kind of, or Batman and Robin, who of course are to be thwarted by, or try to be thwarted by Penguin's villains or minions. So little goons and whatever. So while everyone is fighting Batman and Robin and so on and so forth, we all of a sudden have Batman who ends up getting close to Catwoman, and Catwoman, it seems, is interested in wanting to kiss Batman, of course, as she seems to always be. And we all of a sudden have Penguin who is to hit Batman in the back of the head. And then we all of a sudden have Batman realize that there are 3 different Catwomen in front of him. And I'm like, oh, okay, so they perfectly make us realize that, of course, there had been 3 Catwomen being played at certain points of the past. And so I'm like, okay, good. So they actually put that in here somewhere. And I was like, man, that kind of sucks, because what if you're not a big fan of so-and-so Catwoman and you like the other ones? Like, well, like, you're just going to go on and have this Catwoman be in this film. So that ends up being what it is. But all 3 of them are technically shown here, which I thought was really fun. So we have, of course, the villains trying to make way with Replica Ray as they get into the Joker mobile. They try to skedaddle out of here. So we have Batman and Robin chasing behind them with the Batmobile. So we have the Riddler that goes on to start firing this weapon that is to start to get rid of certain parts of the road and kind of put these kind of holes there. So we have Batman and Robin that use the Bat-Zooka, which is kind of a weird, goofy thing. So Riddler uses the weapon to leave a massive hole in the street, which just kind of leaves both Batman and Robin with the inability to continue their chase. So they go to find that there is this tinfoil, and there's like, yeah, like, we've been foiled. So we bizarrely go back to the Batcave, where they are to analyze that tinfoil that is to go on and tell them exactly where they need to go next. Because, of course, there's always that, like, riddle of a thing. So Batman ended up taking the tinfoil and putting it in the Bat Analyzer, and he finally realizes that this tinfoil is to come from the TV Dinner Factory. I know that there's like a name before that, but I'm just going to call it the TV Dinner Factory. That's easier to say. So we come to find that at this TV Dinner Factory, we go on to have Catwoman, who has this master plan of using the Batnip against Batman. And we, of course, have Penguin that's like, wah, 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 like it's been used before. And so, of course, we have Penguin with wah, 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 because that's usually what he does. And so we have both Batman and Robin that how they make their way into this TV dinner factory is they kind of use their batarangs and they kind of do the climbing. And so we would, of course, have, while they're climbing, them both talking about like upper body strength and how Robin, I guess, possibly like skips leg day. So we have Batman and Robin make their way into the TV dinner factory. And what ends up happening is that Catwoman ends up knocking out both Batman and Robin with a spray can. And so we come to find out that Batman and Robin are to be a giant TV dinner themselves. And will Batman and Robin survive? Tune in next time on the continuation of this same story. Uh, feels like we were gonna get so often like so many like cliffhanger things where it's like, or they were gonna give us like the same bat time, same bat channel, or some other goofy thing. They did give us like the transitional like like they did also give us the theme song in this movie, but they didn't actually have the lyrics in it. So like they just like they didn't do the Batman, 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 they didn't do that. They just did the music, which I was like, okay, like that just kind of sucks. Like I want the Batman part of well, the lyrics part of it. But no, they just gave me the musical intro because it probably costs a lot of money to get that. Who knows? But so Batman and Robin are to become this giant TV dinner to go into this giant oven. And so we again are to talk about the catnip, as we, of course, have Catwoman, who is to scratch Batman on the face. And we would assume that Batman is going to succumb to this Batnip, and it seems that he doesn't at first. But then we start to find out in this story that the Batnip is to have this kind of slow, slow build of an effect instead of it just being a right away thing. So while the villains are to leave, we have both Batman and Robin that are to realize that since they are to be close to this TV dinner and they can use certain parts of it to try and free themselves, they realize that the dessert of this TV dinner could help them, as it is to be a lemon tart. And so Batman is to dip his ropes into this lemon tart, and it bizarrely frees Batman to help Robin. Like, okay, let me kind of unrope you. So we go on to have both Batman and Robin that make their way to the Commissioner and the Chief while they're going on and watching the Russians make their way into outer space. Because, of course, we know the Russians would go on and try to attempt to go into outer space before Americans did, and so on and so forth. It's a big whole thing, even though it's not a big, huge deal. So now that like everybody's gone on to go into outer space, like it doesn't really like it's not a big thing anymore. But so we all of a sudden have both the commissioner and the chief talking about the space race, and we have Batman and Robin coming in and they're like, well, hey, like, is this our like tax-paying dollars hard at work? And so the commissioner and the chief's like, oh, I'm sorry. So we go on to have both Batman and Robin that end up leaving the station after talking to the commissioner and the chief. So we end up having, after Batman and Robin are done dealing with the commissioner and the chief, we then come to find that Aunt Harriet is trying to go on and figure out certain secrets of possibly Bruce and Grayson, and she is to be in the room that could possibly lead her to figuring things out. The one statue where you can go on and kind of adjust the head and hit this button and find the Batman and Robin bat poles and the red phone and so on and so forth. So as Bruce and Grayson make their way to see Aunt Harriet, they go on and of course realize, whew, like, man, that was close. That we kind of got rid of her before she was to find out our secret. So Bruce calls in Alfred to be like, well, hey, like, Aunt Harriet came really close into finding out our secret, and so Bruce is blaming Alfred for that, so much so that Bruce is now going to fire Alfred over it. And so Alfred's like, okay, must win. And so he goes on and leaves, and Grayson's like, what? Like, how, Bruce, how can you go on and just fire Alfred? Like, he's like family. And so we would, of course, just have Batman or Bruce who goes on and just fires Alfred, because there is to be a whole weird thing about that we find out later, of why that whole thing just works in the end of the story. So we come to find that our heroes are trying to look everywhere for our villains. And so they're using the bat boat, they're using the bat copter or bat helicopter. I don't know exactly what what is that called exactly. But so we have both Batman and Robin who's looked high and low for these villains, and they realize they can't find them anywhere. So they must realize that these villains are out of this world. And so we have to come to realize the villains are actually to be on that rocket that the Russians were on. And so we come to find out that Penguin knocks out the astronauts, and we have both Batman and Robin who are going to take on the Bat Rocket to make their way into space. Because I guess Bruce somehow just has a Bat Rocket just lying around. So we have the Joker, the Penguin, and the Riddler, who all decide to turn on Catwoman once they make to the space station. They couldn't have turned on her earlier, before they got to space. But so, because they realize that Catwoman is going soft on Batman, as well as we would also realize, hey man, how many times has the Riddler has given like the dynamic duo like a plethora of clues of where they're going. Like, you would think that that would be a certain person you just wouldn't trust. But so we have Batman and Robin that get their Bat Rocket to the space station, And so we again have them doing this space back climb, it seems, kind of with their feet, making their way to where they need to go. So we have them then talk about, like, well, hey, like, man, wouldn't this be great if, like, we could just kind of, like, go on and be able to just easily be easily able to climb up buildings like this at home. And or Batman goes on and states, well, yeah, but you would, like, lose all of your strength in your body, and so that would be just a horrible thing. So they're doing this space climb or spacewalk up onto this building while Catwoman is getting taken by the villains. So we have the villains who want to put Catwoman in this airlock, which doesn't really quite make sense for how Catwoman is able to, like, seemingly almost breathe outside of the ship, obviously. But so she gets shot out of this airlock. Batman quickly catches her, and so we have Batman and Robin and Catwoman make their way to meet up with the villains. So we have Penguin that decides that he wants to go on and hit the anti-gravity, so they're kind of floating up in the air. Batman and Robin try to hit or try to kick the villains, and nothing seems to be working. Batman goes on and uses Batarang, and it doesn't work, but it ends up ricocheting, but it hits the anti-gravity to turn it back off. So to turn the anti-gravity back on. So we then have Batman, who is to just get very upset with his villains, and realizing that they are no longer bound by the jurisdiction of Earth, and so in space, I guess there are no rules, and so Batman gets out his fisticuffs, or his bat cuffs, bat fisticuffs, and he just starts going nuts on his villains. And so we, of course, have Batman that recites, like, well, hey, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. That, of course, is the Batman 89 line. We also have him recite the Dark Knight Returns, like, operating table, and I'm the sergeant thing, which I didn't quite get that line right away, but I was like, God, why is this so familiar? Because I had seen the Batman Returns animated movie, which, of course, we would have Batman in the early parts of that, who's, like, racing this car, and he wants to just kind of figure out a way to just kind of end his life. So he's, like, taking all these, like, ridiculous risks, and then he realizes that he needs to be Batman again. But anyways, so we find out after Batman and Robin, with almost the help of Catwoman, is to take out all the villains, and they have made their way back to Earth. We go on to have Batman and Robin, who are both talking to Commissioner Gordon. And so Batman tells them that he is going to keep the replicator ray, and because it'll be in safer hands with them. And so all of a sudden, while Commissioner Gordon is starting to talk here, we all of a sudden find that Batman all of a sudden disappears. And Robin is still like, hey, what the heck just happened? And we have Robin, who is to make his way out of the station and realize that like Batman had driven away. So Robin's like, okay, crap, what am I gonna do? Like, so he starts like kind of like hitchhiking, but we come to find out later when Grayson is to meet back up with Bruce that he luckily was able to borrow a bike. So we have Bruce again, who is watching Gotham Palace as we all of a sudden have this band called the Bedbugs. So we have Aunt Harriet that comes in and has a joke about Bruce and Grayson's fishing trip as Bruce contemplates getting rid of Aunt Harriet, as well as like both Bruce and Grayson now being there. So we have Grayson, who is to start to just confront Bruce about like what he's been doing lately and how odd he's been acting, and how Bruce had even gotten rid of Alfred. And so Bruce is like, well, hey, if you don't like what I've gone on and done with Alfred, you can go and join him in Skid Row, and just kind of closes the door on Grayson to have him realize that he's possibly going to be all on his own. So the next thing we see is all of a sudden Hobo Alfred, where he's getting all these items and he's collecting these things. So we have the commissioner and we have the chief that are just stuck on a case, and they are hoping that they can rely on Batman to call him through this red phone, but it seems that he has not been answering. Bruce takes the red phone and he throws it in the fire because he's just tired of it. And so we all of a sudden find out that crime is at an all-time high. We all of a sudden have this bank, armor car, and high school robbery of sorts. And so we finally have the commissioner and the chief. They're all of a sudden having this conversation, and Batman appears in front of them. So Batman is to question the commissioner and the chief about why they should even be employed, if it seems that they have to rely so much on Batman. So we all of a sudden have Batman that is stating to both Commissioner and both the Chief that he wants to go on and replace them, and he wants them to undress to be able to give a rightful replacement their outfits, which of course is to be Batman himself, because he'll duplicate himself to become the Commissioner and to become the Chief. So in my brain, I'm thinking like, well, the commissioner is just wearing a normal, like, just suit. Why is he having to give up anything? But he starts to just take off his clothes like the chief is doing. And so we all of a sudden have both Batmen who are wearing the commissioner and chief outfits, and they're just starting to weirdly just sound like the chief and the commissioner, and it's just very weird. So we then have all of a sudden people bizarrely all getting replaced here. We have the mayor, Linseed, replaced, a judge gets replaced, a chef gets replaced by Bat Chef. So we come to find out, I guess, even a mechanic is to get replaced, as Batman is to go on and soup up his Batmobile absurdly. And so, as if he's, like, gonna be on the Bat and Furious or something. Instead of Fast and Furious, Bat and Furious. Anyways, so Grayson is going off on his own in someplace somewhere. And again, he's practicing his ballet. And so Grayson realizes that the Batnip would have had to have worked after all, and needs to, of course, have the help of Catwoman to reverse all this. So he goes to the Kit Kat cave. Very unusual place. Didn't know that there was actually a lair for Batwoman, or it's probably just been a while since I've seen something like that uh, from the Batman show. So we come to find Robin making his way into this cave, club, Kit Kat, whatever. And so he's talking to the bartender, and the bartender is to hit this trapdoor button. Robin is to fall through it. And so he all of a sudden is to land himself in this giant bird cage. And so we, of course, have Robin who is to ask Catwoman for an antidote. And so Catwoman is willing to help out Robin because, of course, she wants to help out Batman. And so, because, of course, Batman had saved her before and all that jazz. So, we have, of course, this kind of weird thing where now Catwoman is all of a sudden having this kind of like Batman approach to herself as she's like, well, like, let's go to the Catmobile. So both Robin and Catwoman make their way into the Catmobile, and Robin's driving, and Catwoman asks Robin, it's like, well, hey, like, are you old enough to drive? And we would, of course, have Robin who states, like, well, yeah, like, I can drive, I have a permit. Like, there just has to be another person that's an adult that has to be also with me. So, come to find out that it'll be a little bit bizarre because also Catwoman will be doused with a sleeping agent because they are needing to go to the Batcave. So, both Robin and, of course, Catwoman make their way to the Batcave. So, we have them go on to attempt to make the bat nip antidote. And so they find Batman. So Batman wants to kill Robin, and Catwoman gives Batman the antidote as Batman has anticipated that. And so he had gone on to create the Bat anti-antidote. Bizarrely enough. So, we all of a sudden have both Batman and Robin who are now, like, dueling with their bat belts. So, their bat gadgets, it seems. So, we have, of course, bat knockout gas being used, and we have the counter of bat wake up gas. We have bat cuffs, bat lockpicks, bat bombs, bat shields, and all of a sudden Catwoman's like, you know what? I'm tired of this. Like, this is getting old. So Catwoman tries to use her whip on Batman. Batman grabs the whip and chucks Catwoman and hits her into Robin. And so both Catwoman and Robin together are to be sprayed with knockout gas by Batman. So when Robin and Catwoman awake, they realize that they are tied up and they are going to possibly be dropped in a nuclear silo. And so Catwoman wants a kiss from Batman, as, of course, Robin is to interrupt. And so we then have Batman who is to drop both Robin and Catwoman into the silo as he walks away, because we naturally assume that both Robin and Catwoman are going to die, because everything that they are possibly going to use as a strategy does not work. Batman possibly is to figure out every strategy beforehand, so that way neither Robin nor Catwoman can figure out a way to get out of here so easily. Like, they try to like swing with the rope, and Robin realizes no, like the rope is not quite able for us to get to a place where we can kind of get out of here. And so we come to find that our characters are just to have to wait till they get into the nuclear silo, even much more so. And how they get free is just to be dipped down, because Robin is to have realized that Batman would have used the nuclear silo, so he had sprayed both himself and both Catwoman with the Bat anti-isotope spray. And so we of course have Robin, who makes a Batman Forever reference. It's like, well, hey, like, will we lose Batman forever? So Robin comes up with the idea that they are going to release the prisoners to help fight Batman, and so that's the big strategy. So they go to Gotham State Penitentiary. So Catwoman and Robin are disguised as prison inspectors to replace pickaxes and balls and chains with other things that we come to find out will be balloons and axes that help people fly. While the warden sees all prisoners besides Riddler, Joker, and Penguin got out, as all of a sudden we come to find that Joker, Riddler, and Penguin are all of a sudden to turn into dust, because we find out that the replica ray is unstable, and so the things that were actually doing the Joker, Riddler, and Penguin's time were actually just to be their doppelgangers. And so, moving on. So, Batman is now selfishly hosts the Gotham Palace, because he desperately just wants attention, as he admits that in some point soon. Because we all of a sudden find that Miranda Monroe is tied up. Batman realizes he became Batman to get attention instead of instilling fear into villainish, cowardly lot people. So Batman has put detonators on people's TVs from an aerial thing, and to keep people watching on their TVs, or it'll explode. So we all of a sudden have Robin and Catwoman coming in with all of these villains. We start to see like all these kind of like ooh, ah, ooh, yeah, with all these villains like Siren, Bookworm, Mr. Freeze, Louis the Lilac, Shame, Egghead, King Tut. So we now have to have Batman, who is to need to go on and fight all these villains. So we find out that Batman is to be the cameraman, and he has to adjust this camera for a fight scene setting, bizarrely. So as the Bat Band plays, oddly enough. So Batman knocks out Egghead, and Batman punches through flowers of all things against the Lilac character, Louis the Lilac. And when Mr. Freeze is to try and freeze one of the Batmans because he was successful in freezing another, we have one of the Batmans who uses his Bat Heat Shield and goes on to stop Mr. Freeze. So, Batman grab and knock out Robin after Robin hits a button on Batman's belt. So, a man appears to give Batman a champagne bottle, which is like, okay, that was kind of random. And as a congratulations on basically taking over the town. And so we go on to have Batman, who is oddly just like, okay, I'll just take this champagne bottle and just consume it. And we come to find out that Batman had got the antidote and is back to normal now, bizarrely. So, when the rest of the Batmen start surrounding Batman, Robin, and Catwoman, we realize that they are starting to turn into dust. And we find out that the Batmen were to always and forever be molecularly unstable, and that is the reason why they are all to turn into dust now. And for some reason, I actually remember the replica ray being used in the Batman 66 just now, because I remember at certain points that this thing would actually turn people into dust, and it would always just be very weird. Because I think we had at one point where Penguin is to have the replica ray, and he tries to replicate goons, and at some point, like, the goons just turned into dust. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess, like, that wasn't a well-spent thing. But anyways, moving on. So, the Commissioner-in-Chief praised Batman for solving this case, as Batman redirects that praise to both Robin and Catwoman. Batman kisses Catwoman as she's possibly going to need to still go to jail, and so she kisses him like, well, that's going to keep me warm on those long nights of probably spending the rest of my life in jail. So, we find Alfred was the champagne bringer of all people, because Batman had made a deal with Alfred that if there was ever a time where Alfred would fire, or if there was ever a time where Bruce would fire Alfred, it would obviously be because Batman would be like under the control of something, and so Batman will of course need Alfred's help. So Batman realizes Joker, Penguin, and Riddler had their duplicates get arrested and knew the ray was unstable. So that the molecular instability were just turned into dust. So Batman and Robin realize that the villains will be accomplishing heists, and Catwoman wants to help as she is in the Batmobile already. So we have Joker, Penguin, and Riddler who are going on and stealing these items. So we find that the Riddler is to steal this first puzzle, as we have Penguin who is to steal this egg, of course, and we have Joker who is to steal this clown painting. And they're like, well, like, that item isn't probably going to hold, like, a lot of value. And the Joker is like, well, like, it will hold a lot of value after I kill the painter that's still alive. So we have the villains that realize the jig is up and that Batman and Robin are going to chase them down. So all the villains go on and jump onto Penguin's umbrella and ride off as Batman and Robin and Catwoman get the whirly bats, whatever that is. I've never seen that before in my life. Uh, to make their way onto Penguin's blimp. So, or to try to make their way to Penguin's blimp. So, because the batarangs are to try and hit the propellers of the Penguin's blimp, and we of course have Penguin, who is to reference Birds of Prey here. So I'm like, oh, okay, we're just referencing a lot of stuff here. Maybe that's just a weird, goofy coincidence. So, or maybe it's just a line that they used in the part of this to make sense. Anyways, so we have Batman and Robin, and we have the villains that are on top of this blimp. And while they're fighting, we have at one point where Robin is to almost fall off the blimp, and Catwoman uses her whip to save Robin. And we have Batman and Robin that uses their batarangs to tie up these goons, and they kind of get tied and kind of fall off the blimp. So Riddler is to kind of fall, but he falls under this dress, which then ends up having him fall on this cop car because he fell in a dress that was on this kind of clothing line, and then he falls in this cop car, so they, of course, arrest him. So the Joker is to jump off to make his way into luckily falling right into this circus tent that he is to kind of punch a hole through or poke a hole through, and he all of a sudden is smacking into all of these circus acts that all of a sudden he lands in this this clown cop car, bizarrely enough. So Catwoman tries running away with all of the loot the villain stole, as Batman wants her to reconsider. Batwoman agrees to go with Batman only if they retire to Europe, as if this is the later Batman movies, which trying to maybe reference that. So, and Catwoman is also to state, like, as long as they also kill Robin. So, as the blimp buckles, Catwoman is to, like, kind of drop her loot and ends up getting it caught by Batman and Robin, and decides to fall off the blimp. Batman is to go on and have this reference as loving you is wrong and I want to be right. And so, as he blows his nose, so we have that all resolved, and so the next thing we have is that we have this birthday party at Wayne Manor. We all of a sudden come to find out that this is Aunt Harriet's birthday party, and so Bruce and both Grayson are to state that, oh yeah, like the reason why we were running off to all these fishing trips was for Aunt Harriet's birthday party. Maybe that was the thing that Aunt Harriet was trying to figure out. So we would all of a sudden have Alfred that is to alert both Grayson and Bruce that another bat signal is going on, and so we would have Aunt Harriet's like, well, hey, why are you guys running off for now? Like the whole secret of it all is all over. And so Bruce and Grayson, it's like, well, hey, we're going ski shooting and at night. Okay. So we have them both leave to go on and fight crime yet again, and so that is to be the way this movie just ends. So with that said, I'm going to try to get out of here so I can get out of here quickly, because I know that this is kind of creeping up on the actual time that this was. So goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.